You're a wolfwalker. I met a girl in the forest who has magic powers. When she sleeps, she turns into a wolf. She's a wolfwalker. Something's happened to me. Be a wolf.
It's been 6 years since Song of the Sea, Tom. And I know it went into production in 2015. I was just wondering what the word was in terms of, the early stages of getting this together.
What was the word?
Sort of like the early stages of getting this together.
What was that like?
Come about?
Yeah, it was even while we were working on finishing Song of the Sea, Ross and I started talking about this idea, and I think it was a little bit late getting started because Song of the Sea kind of rolled out over a year, territory by territory, so we couldn't really knuckle down until 15. And then in 15 we were focusing mostly on the writing and just designing the characters, and just, there was a long period of just development and writing and trying to draw out the themes. I think Ross and I wanted to draw out themes about, species extinction and kind of the polarization we were seeing in society. And as I was saying in a few interviews earlier, like, it's kind of sad in a way that it's only become more and more prescient or relevant as the years have gone on. Those themes have gotten more and more urgent, I think,
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, and as I was, watching, I was just thinking that how it must have been to have these ideas in 2015 about like right-wing populism or environmentalism that are still, if anything, more timely now the film is coming out 5 years later.
Yeah, it's more relevant and more strong now. It's really scary.
I got a little bit depressed about 3 years ago about it all, and I think it was good to have a project to kind of focus a lot of energy into that we hoped would like contribute in a positive way to the discussion,
Okay, so in terms of the fact that you're both co-directing together for the first time, I was just wondering how organically that collaboration has been since the start of the project.
I would say it was pretty, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, pretty organic, yeah.
Yeah, Tom and myself are like old friends, so like we're friends since we were 11, went to the same school together and everything. So personality-wise, we knew it would be easily done. And because we grew up and both had the same influences, like in terms of visual art, like we both went to the same animation college, we both like the same graphic novels and everything. We have very similar tastes, so it's very much in tandem. So really, it was just about sharing the responsibilities. That was the kind of gamble. And we both co-directed a segment for The Prophet, which came out about 5 years ago. It was only about 4 or 5 minutes long, but that gave us a taste of like what co-directing would be. And seeing as that worked out okay, we thought we'd try it out with a feature film.
Okay. And what is it that you both think that you bring to the table that the other can't then, in terms of working together? I'd say you've known each other most of your lives, but this is the first time you're co-directing.
Tom brings a beard. I don't bring a beard.
I only recently brought the beard to the table. It's a COVID beard. No, I
lockdown beard, I have to say.
But I have to say, I don't know. I think Ross and I kind of have natural strengths that we play to. Like, I focus a little bit more on character and animation, and Ross is more focused on the backgrounds. And then we kind of pool our resources on story. I had a little bit more experience directing, having done the previous features, but I still think that Ross had been part of those features in such a deep way, especially as art director of Secret of Cows. And he was the art director, but the studio was so tiny for years that we'd worked side by side for a long time. So it was a kind of natural division of labor. I think Ross brings a certain musical sensibility that I don't have, because he actually plays traditional Irish music, where I just enjoy listening to it, but I'm not able to technically, or I wouldn't have that deep a knowledge of it. So I think Ross brought some things that I didn't have in the previous movies to the fore in this one.
Yeah, I think for me, Tom was able to tell me so much about how directing is about team management and politics and about being diplomatic and everything like that. Yeah. So if I had done it on myself, maybe I would have made some terrible decisions in about how to give retakes or anything. But
there's a collaborative aspect that I think you have to learn as a director, which is kind of weirdly selfless, because after it's done, you get to do all these interviews and take all the credit. But while you're making it, you have to make it feel like it's everybody's movie. And honestly, this was the most, like right from the beginning, Ross and I decided to make this the most collaborative we could, and to give a lot of ownership to every department. So nobody felt like a technician. Everybody felt like an artist and a filmmaker. And so I think that if the movie's good, it's because we were open to collaborating rather than controlling too much.
Could you just talk me through like a couple of examples of what you did specifically to just make this a sort of more collaborative project with the rest of the animation team?
Well, like one of the things that typically happens in animation is it's a bit like a funnel. So all the decisions are made at the start, and then at a certain point when it gets really wide, that everyone's just following orders and trying to just keep on styling and copy exactly what's been set at the beginning. But what we tried to do was right from the beginning have, research trips that included everybody, even artists who were working in the studios in Luxembourg and in France. We would take them on trips around Ireland to show them the things that were inspiring us. And of course, Kilkenny, where the studio is based, they could see that. And then also to empower each department to bring something to it. So typical department that would become quite technical is ink and paint, where they're just coloring the characters. But we said, no, we want you to turn your brain on. You can't switch off and just like pop colors in. We wanted to think about how you can add to the movement, into the flow of the motion. So they would do things like make the characters' colors bleed outside the lines if it helped with the movement, things like that. So just trying to give every department a little bit of a say in what ended up on screen rather than direct blueprints that they just had to copy like robots,
Yeah, Wolf Vision would have been another collaborative thing where we worked with our director, animator, Evan McNamara, and like we just had an idea of kind of what the Wolf Vision scenes should feel like. They should feel free and empowering and like very different to everything else in the film, and like very much like a roller coaster ride for the audience. But really, Evan came up with the style so much, he put so much work into that. So that would be a collaboration between all three of us.
Yeah. And were there any sort of challenges like working in this more collaborative way instead of just, as you said, like dictating from the start what it's going to be?
Yeah, it was hard because sometimes when you do that, people get really into their bit and they bring 110%, which is wonderful. And then what can be really challenging is that you have to make a call to rein it in a bit. So rather than us trying to pull people up, we were trying to keep everyone in the same direction. So I think the challenge could be that somebody might go overboard with something and we go, you've done too much. We need to calm down a bit because everything can't be 110%, And so that was probably the only real challenge with that. And keeping everybody, what we had to do was very regularly have meetings with the whole team and talk about what the point of this department or the point of this part of the movie was and why this part was in the movie, so that everyone understood that their part was part of a bigger whole and they didn't get lost in their speciality,
Yeah. So, and again, another part of the production is I just want to know when the voice cast came on board and what the process was for finding the right voices.
So I suppose for the animatic, we just use scratch voice actors, like sometimes people from the crew and like local actors and that. And we would have done all our storyboarding and our main animatic for that until the whole the animatic is locked down, and then we would get the proper dialogue recorded. But I think we had started looking for the cast like halfway through the animatic stage, just so we could get them lined up to work on it. And some of the actors like Sean Bean were definitely our first preference. Like we were designing the character of Bill for Sean Bean's voice, and then other characters like Eva came a little bit later and were a bit more of a gamble, and we weren't sure of who exactly would play that part of Maeve until we saw Eva's casting tape, and she really stood out from the crowd, So it was a bit organic.
Like the mad thing with actors is like if it's an adult actor, you have a sense of what they've done before, but when you're casting kids, sometimes they weren't even born when you had the idea. Like Eva would have been like 1 year old when we started writing it because she was 8 years old when we recorded her. So like that's a whole other kettle of fish than casting like a Sean Bean or a Simon McBurney, who you kind of can tell from the body of work they've done before what they'll bring,
Yeah, and that's also just like a recurring issue, I imagine, because of the
I've had a 15, 20-year career now of being blessed that some child somewhere was being born just as I was coming up with an idea, and they were just about the right age when I needed them to play a voice.
And it's harder too, because even when you get like a year later, if you need the child actor to do like a couple of extra lines of dialogue, if the script has changed, their voice has changed a little bit just because a year in that age is.
But with the
so
with the girls, it was so much easier then. On Song of the Sea, we got David Rawl back to do a voice for the trailer, and he just sounded like a different person, because a little boy from 11 to 12 or 13 is like completely different. So thankfully, Eva was able to go down a few octaves when we asked her to, and still sound like she was 8, even though she's like 12 now.
So, and again, just to go back to sort of, you said earlier, Ross, that you both have sort of similar influences, and Princess Mononoke is clearly the big sort of touchstone on this. I was just wondering if there was anything else you were both inspired by.
My Princess Mononoke cup.
Yeah. Well, anything else that you sort of inspired by in terms of just animated films that would help bring this folklore to life?
I think one of the huge things about the visual style of Wolfwalkers is that we weren't only influenced by animations and by animated features or short films. We're drawing influences from graphic novels, from comics, from even fine artists, from like even from impressionist painters and stuff. But The Tale of Princess Kaguya was a huge influence for like Wolf Vision and for like how sketchy you could actually go on a big screen. But yeah, with Mononoke, we were so aware of like the similarities between the story and everything that we tried to, if in any way, not be influenced by it.
Steer away a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think Mononoke kind of sits behind most filmmakers as this kind of masterpiece that you don't want to get too close to because you can't touch it. So yeah.
Another Tom, I may be misremembering this, but I seem to remember around the time of Song of the Sea, you did an interview with Sight and Sound when you said you were working on a project that was influenced by Batman the Animated Series as well. And, if that ended up feeding into this as well.
Yeah, I think at the time, I remember that. I don't remember the interview, but I remember at the time early on, Ross and I had a folder of like Batman art where they had been really brave with the shadows. And we kind of traced that influence right back to like German expressionist cinema. And we realized that the animated series, the Batman animated series that I'd loved as a teenager or as a kid, had actually drawn a lot from like 1920s German expressionism and film noir and all that. And so we brought that in a little bit into inside in the castle when Robin's coming in to rescue the mother wolf, Moll. We played with the shadows in a way that is kind of like the Batman series would do, where Bruce Wayne would walk along and in the shadow would be Batman's shadow, that kind of thing, you know.
Oh wow! Well, I'm glad that I didn't just misremember that. And I was...
No, and it's big. Honestly, for me personally, the Batman animated series is one of the big inspirations for me as a kid, because I kind of grew out of my early influences like Don Bluth and stuff, and I just loved comics. But when the animated series came on, I was like, this is awesome, you know, this is like animation doing something for a slightly different audience, not being cute but being a bit dramatic and stuff, you know.
Yeah, being a bit daring. Yeah.
So John's just messaged, said there's only 3 minutes left, so I'll get I'll get cracking and just say, I know you've got a Cartoon Saloon have a Netflix movie next year. I was just wondering if there was anything else that you two personally were working on.
Personally, I think I'm going back to painting for a year, and I'll work on some exhibitions, and I might do a short kind of kids book or something like that. But like I like to dip in and out of animation, in that if you do something for too long, you can get like a little bit trapped by it or a little bit bored by it. So I'll work on other types of art for a year and then go back in. But I haven't got anything lined up for when I go back in. Maybe there'll be another film.
Yeah, has working with Tomm made you get the itch to direct something all by yourself now?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, like more out of curiosity of what way the film would go without it being a collaboration, you know, because like I've done like a short film here or there or whatever, but just for a feature film it's a whole other ballgame. So I'd like to see what I would do. Maybe it'll be a complete flop and totally
I'm excited to see what Ross does. It'd be awesome. That's probably the next step for me with the studio. I have a few more ideas, but I'm really enjoying seeing that some of my colleagues over the first 20 years are becoming directors now and seeing what they're doing. I'm excited by that. So the Saloon has a load of projects at the moment and they're all really interesting and exciting. So I'm happy to kind of shepherd them along for a while.
Okay. So, but can you give us a little hint about anything that you are personally working on, or is that all?
Well, I just finished a short that I'm really passionate about for Greenpeace, and
Okay.
that's going to be released soon, and that really tied into so many of my personal interests because I was able to play with, indigenous art from South America, talk about environmentalism, speciesism, things that I really care about, and so that's the kind of thing that I'm developing now. I'm looking more and more at how we can draw out from indigenous cultures stories that we need to tell for our kind of out of balance capitalist world that we live in.
Oh, wow. Well, I'll look forward to seeing it whenever that's available.
Eventually, I don't know when that'll be, dude, but eventually, Alistair, you'll see.
Yeah, I'll just impatiently refreshing the Greenpeace website in the hope that it appears.
Oh, that will be the 22nd of October. We're going to plaster that everywhere. And we just today we got a great endorsement from Paul McCartney, so hopefully we're gonna gather more celebrities and people that want to endorse that message, and it should be everywhere soon.